Walt Disney's Enchanted Tiki Room. It might seem a little dated these days, but by 1963 standards, the technology behind the moving, singing, breathing, living tiki birds was enough to stop Disneyland guests in their tracks. Literally. When the Tiki Room first opened, an audio animatronic barker bird named Juan was placed outside the attraction's entrance in an attempt to lure people inside. But it worked too well. Guests would stop to marvel at Juan the barker bird, which would cause traffic jams that blocked the entrance to Adventureland. Eventually, Juan was removed, a victim of his own popularity. The Tiki Room was conceived by Walt Disney himself and endures as one of guests' most loved attractions. Versions of the Tiki Room are still at multiple Disney parks, operating as living museums, tributes to the birds who say words, the first ever audio animatronics developed by Imagineers. So what in the hell was Disney thinking in 1998 when they reimagined this show as the Enchanted Tiki Room under new management, starring Zazu from The Lion King and Iago from Aladdin? It was bad. Real bad. So bad that maybe somebody tried to burn it down. I'm Clover with Cloverloo, and we're about to find out why the Enchanted Tiki Room under new management was Disney's worst attraction update of all time. The Tiki Room is a pseudo-Polynesian musical animatronics show inspired by mid-century American tiki culture. It originally opened at Disneyland in 1963 and was followed by versions at the Magic Kingdom in 1971 and Tokyo Disneyland in 1983. To better understand why Disney's revamp of the Enchanted Tiki Room was so ill-fated, we first need to understand why the original attraction was so beloved. And a lot of that has to do with the simple and delightful nature of the original show. The Enchanted Tiki Room at Disneyland and its later counterparts at Disney World and Tokyo Disneyland was designed to be a captivating and timeless experience that whisks visitors away to a tropical paradise filled with whimsical characters, vibrant colors, and enchanting melodies. The adventure begins as patrons take their seats in a circular theater adorned with Polynesian-inspired decor. Once settled, the audience is greeted by their bird hosts, a group of 4 colorful macaws named Jose, Michael, Pierre, and Fritz. These cultural stereotypes, perched high above, engage in some puns and witty banter, and then the birds and flowers start to sing the Tiki 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 Room, a song penned by the Sherman Brothers, the Disney songwriting dream team behind countless movie classics like The Jungle Book and Mary Poppins, and theme park earworms like It's a Small World After All, and One Little Spark from Journey into Imagination. As the show continues, a water jet from the central fountain rises to the ceiling, and I gotta admit that this very simple illusion fooled me for years. It's just a clear pipe that's obscured by the falling water. Then as the fountain descends, so does the Birdmobile, revealing a chorus line of beautiful cockatoos who perform the song, "Let's All Sing Like the Birdies Sing." The next song, the Hawaiian War Chant, brings the flowers and the tiki carvings into the show as well. The song's chant grows and grows in volume until suddenly the room erupts in thunder with lightning and rain pounding against the windows because, as our host tells us, the gods have been angered by all the celebrating. The birds wrap up the show with a medley number, and then the host birds promise to show guests a magic trick by making the audience disappear. As guests leave the theater, the birds sing a modified version of Hi Ho that exclaims, "Hi ho, it's out the door you go." If the voices from the Tiki Room sound familiar, there's a reason for that. Fritz is voiced by Thurl Ravenscroft, the actor who originally voiced Tony the Tiger, sang "You're a Mean One, Mr. Grinch," and performed the lead vocals for Grim Grinning Ghosts in the Haunted Mansion. Jose is voiced by Wally Bogue, who was the original star of the Golden Horseshoe Revue, from opening all the way up through 1986. Bogue also co-wrote the script for the Haunted Mansion. Michael is voiced by Fulton Burley, who also worked on the Golden Horseshoe Revue, and Pierre is performed by Ernie Newton, who also voiced the Beheaded Knight on the Haunted Mansion. The Enchanted Tiki Room represents a historic convergence of artistry and technology. Behind the vibrant plumage and catchy songs lies a fascinating journey marked by Disney's ingenuity and the talents of legendary Imagineers. During the late 1950s, with Disneyland's initial success resonating throughout California, Walt Disney's ambitions expanded. Inspired by the growing public fascination with Polynesian culture following Hawaii's 1959 statehood, plans for a new thematic addition to Adventureland unfolded. Yet a mere replica of island life fell short of Walt's expectations. This new creation had to be something extraordinary. During a trip to New Orleans, a simple souvenir ignited a breakthrough for Walt Disney. A small mechanical bird in a cage captivated him with its intricate movement, and he marveled at the potential it hinted at. Combining animation with sound seamlessly, giving objects the illusion of life and personality, the seed of audio animatronics was planted. And Walt became characteristically obsessed with the idea. He assembled a team of Imagineers and tasked them with developing a new innovation far beyond a simple caged bird souvenir. The initial vision for the Tiki Room revolved around a Polynesian-themed restaurant. Guests would dine upon exotic cuisine while a dazzling ensemble of birds provided light-hearted entertainment. Imagineers also experimented with a Chinese theme, complete with a fortune-telling animatronic of Confucius surrounded by animals. As development progressed, Walt decided that such an innovative technology deserved a standalone stage. The restaurant's magic fountain, originally intended to be a coffee station, remains to this day as a relic of this bygone idea. Even with the stage show concept settled, bringing the birds of the Tiki Room to life was no small feat. Imagineer Harriet Burns took Walt's desire for realistic-looking feathered performers to heart. Birds from the tropics became models. Real feathers were incorporated into the Tiki Room's avian stars. To enable breathing, a custom-woven cashmere was employed. Burns created the special wool after examining Walt Disney's famous blue sweater. She said,
"And that blue sweater, that's where I got the idea for the breastplates on the tiki birds. I looked at his elbow, and it always came back, and it worked. I had taken old girdle material, and I'd taken baby suit material, and that stuff, and glued feathers, and tried all these different shingle things, and it would expand, but when it came back, it crunched all up, and it looked all mangy. I just couldn't figure out how to do a breastplate that expanded and came back and looked decent. Then I saw this brushed wool on his sweater, and it had loose elbows."
Sculptor Blaine Gibson also helped to bring the fanciful cast to life, and Mark Davis contributed his artistic brilliance to iconic elements like the Tiki Gods, enchanting flowers, and the totem poles. And who could forget everybody's favorite Imagineer, Rolly Crump, whose signature touches can be seen all over this attraction. Okay, but what about the behind-the-scenes controls for this elaborate, first-of-its-kind spectacle? I'd like to tell you that it wasn't rocket science, but it actually kind of was. Walt Disney's fascination with space-age technology began through his collaboration with rocket scientist Wernher von Braun, who worked with Disney to popularize space exploration for American television audiences. Von Braun's earlier work included an important breakthrough in missile launch systems that used a magnetic tape system to guide underwater missiles. Since Walt was looking for ways to automate the Tiki Room restaurant show, he thought his rocket scientist friend might have the answer. Imagineers ultimately adapted the military magnetic tape system to synchronize mechanical birds, lighting, and music, marking the birth of audio animatronics. The original computer system required to run the show occupied the entire basement. It was huge and very hot, and required air conditioning, making the Tiki Room the first attraction with AC at Disneyland. Over the years, the Tiki Room has received its share of enhancements. The intricate sounds you hear in the Tiki Room today weren't always that crisp and clear. In the mid-1990s, the Tiki Room's sound system was given a long overdue upgrade. They installed subwoofers in the back, new speakers all throughout, and suddenly you could actually hear all the different instruments in that classic music. In 2005, another update kept the storyline but updated everything else. New digital audio tracks, brand new robotic guts for the animatronics. It was like the Tiki Room got a 21st century heart transplant. And then, of course, there are the Tiki Room's sister locations at Tokyo Disneyland and Walt Disney World in Florida. Tokyo Disneyland opened in 1983 with a clone of the original Tiki Room attraction. Later, that attraction turned into a weird Vegas-style jungle nightclub called Get the Fever that ran from 1999 through 2008. That's when Stitch from Lilo and Stitch moved in, and it's stayed Stitch-themed ever since. But what we're really here to talk about is what went down in Florida. The Walt Disney World version of the Tiki Room opened with the park in 1971. The experience started the same as Disneyland, except that it operated under the names Tropical Serenade and then later the Enchanted Tiki birds. Then in the late 90s, the attraction closed for 8 months to undergo a significant refurbishment. On April 5th, 1998, a day which will live in infamy, a brand new show called the Enchanted Tiki Room under new management opened. And fans were, well, at best confused, and at worst horrified by the changes. So what happened? In 1984, when Michael Eisner became chairman and CEO of what was called Walt Disney Productions back then, he became fixated on bringing young adults to Disney's parks. Disney World was already known as a place for parents and kids, but Eisner wanted to change that and make Disney, fetch. As he saw it, the clear path to luring teens was integrating movies more into the Disney parks experience. Eisner's previous gig was the president of Paramount Pictures, which produced the Indiana Jones movies. So Eisner already had George Lucas on speed dial. The two discussed bringing both Star Wars and Indiana Jones to Disney parks, which they eventually did. Eisner even famously insisted on using the name Splash Mountain to cross-promote the unrelated mermaid movie Splash. Given this movie's first strategy, it's not entirely surprising that Eisner would want to incorporate recognizable IP into an existing attraction that was starting to show its age. During its extended refurbishment, the Tiki Room was rewritten to focus on Gilbert Gottfried's obnoxious parrot Iago from Aladdin and Zazu the prudish hornbill from The Lion King. Let's just say the fans weren't singing a chorus of praises. For starters, I think Eisner overestimated how interested guests were in the mundane details of showbiz, like contract negotiations and marketing. Probably not enough to base an entire attraction on, yet that's just what they did. Regardless, under new management's fundamental flaw was that it was mean. Guests were mocked for attending the current show and ridiculed for liking the older version. Iago even takes one final shot at a different Disney attraction right before the show concludes. Let's take a closer look at this mess. So, what did guests who experienced this atrocity actually sit through? Well, first, guests entered the pre-show area to wait for the show to get rolling, and after a few minutes they were greeted by two birds, William, voiced by Don Rickles, and Morris, voiced by Phil Hartman. This was a showbiz reference to the old William Morris Hollywood talent agency. We soon learned that the birds were agents, each representing one of the two new co-owners of the Tiki Room. They bickered unpleasantly for a few minutes, jamming as many bird puns as possible into their arguments like, "I negotiated my tail feathers off for this deal," and "What? Are you cuckoo?" William and Morris eventually disappeared behind the sliding door, repeatedly shouting, "Did not, did to, did not, did to." At this point, the Automagic Theater doors opened and guests headed into the main show. This room appeared unchanged, and guests found their seats while waiting for the show to begin. Once the show started, people were greeted with Jose's familiar dialogue. "My siestas are getting shorter and shorter. Hey, Michael, mi amigo, pay attention, it's showtime." And so on, all the way through, "Wait, we forgot to wake up the Glee Club." Cue the classic unforgettable Sherman Brothers song as the room came to life. Right when guests were ready to float away on the carefree breeze of a tropical serenade, well, that's when everything went wrong. The Tiki Room song was interrupted by Iago's screaming into a megaphone as he lowered down from the ceiling. There's really nothing quite so jarring as being screamed at by Gilbert Gottfried. He barges into the room and yells, "What is that? I'm gonna toss my crackers, and these people below me, they ain't gonna like that, trust me." It was a surprising tactic to insult the riders of a ride while they were riding the ride, but that's the direction that Disney went with this. Iago then began singing a song to the tune of Aladdin's Friend Like Me, with lyrics like, "'Cause I'm a very famous movie star and all of Hollywood drops my name. Who cares about Aladdin or Jafar? I am the one with the looks and the fame. I got 1,000,000 crackers in the bank and I plan to get 1,000,000,000 more. And you guys will all have me to thank when they're lining up at the door." Guests were also subjected to revised versions of Conga in the Still of the Night and Hot, 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 which is even more baffling because not only were those songs not Disney IP, but they weren't even popular at the time that this attraction debuted. If you're gonna pander, for crying out loud, pander correctly. Zazu, along with the rest of the Tiki Birds, implored Iago to reconsider making such drastic changes. But Iago ignored their pleas and continued to insult the show. Now, there actually was one good thing about the Enchanted Tiki Room under new management, and it was the spectacular audio animatronic of Aoa, the goddess of disaster. She emerged in the center of the room to sing a song and banish Iago for angering the gods. It was a pretty impressive character addition to the show, intimidating, and she felt very close to the audience. When her song was done, both she and Iago disappeared in a cloud of smoke. Not long after, Iago reappeared in a different spot in the room, visibly ruffled and scorched by Aoa's Hadouken. But his mind wasn't changed one bit. He said he still intends to follow through on his original plans to change the show. As the audience is encouraged to stand up and exit the theater, Iago's last words are, "Hey lady, it wouldn't hurt you to walk a little faster," and "Boy, I'm tired. I think I'll head over to the Hall of Presidents and take a nap." The under new management version of the Tiki Room ran for nearly 13 agonizing years. Given the disdain that people expressed for the show, that's kind of wild. Then, as almost a blessing to the fans of the old Tiki Room, a small fire in the upper level of the attraction prompted the show to close in 2011. Unsubstantiated rumors hinted at extensive damage to the Iago animatronic specifically, but perhaps that's just wishful thinking. As far as I can tell, Disney never said what caused the fire, but if you have more information, or if you were a cast member during this time, I would love to know more. Please leave me a comment. During its closure, the Tiki Room quietly returned to its previous state. When it reopened later that year, it was basically the same as the original show, trimmed to include all but one song from the 1963 version. So what happened to that impressive Aoa animatronic? You can still visit her today. At Disney's Polynesian Village Resort, there's a tiki bar called Trader Sam's Grog Grotto. At the back of the bar, you'll see Aoa near the ceiling, resting quietly and waiting for a thirsty guest to order her namesake drink. When the drink is ordered, a storm breaks out, and Aoa lights up to address the guests below. And the drink is pretty yummy too. The Enchanted Tiki Room under new management was such an unprecedented disaster because they could have and should have done so much better. It's not often that Disney completely blows it, but it happens. A somewhat recent example is the Galactic Star Cruiser Hotel. They seem to have misjudged both guest interest in such a thoroughly immersive experience and the limits of what people are willing to pay for entertainment. The evolution of Epcot's Journey into Imagination attraction is another story of Disney's not reading the room correctly. But more often than not, they get it right, or at least pretty close. Revising classic Disney Parks attractions to evolve alongside modern Disney IP makes sense to me. This company has built and acquired a massive catalog of media, and a lot of it is extremely popular. You could easily convince me that modern Disney Parks guests don't care nearly as much about Disney's original attraction ideas as they do about new ways to experience their favorite Marvel, Star Wars, Pixar, and Disney universes. The Pirates of the Caribbean's been updated a bunch of times since 1967. Some of those changes were welcomed by fans and others not so much, but none of the updates fundamentally changed the experience of the ride. The most notable changes were the additions of Jack Sparrow and Captain Barbossa to help bridge the gap between the story of the ride and the stories of the movie franchise. At California Adventure, the Twilight Zone Tower of Terror was updated to Guardians of the Galaxy Mission Breakout. And that meant that once Marvel Campus opened, the updated Guardians ride fit right in thematically. Personally, I think it's a worse ride. The Twilight Zone Tower of Terror was damn near the pinnacle of Disney's experiential storytelling at the time, and it was really a shame to see it go. So I'm not saying that I condone what's going on, I'm just saying I understand. Will Disney get it right with their latest ride update, Tiana's Bayou Adventure? No doubt it was time for Splash Mountain to go. And I'm excited to see how Disney brings The Princess and the Frog to life as a park attraction. Aside from the theming problem at Magic Kingdom that will be created by basing a New Orleans attraction in Frontierland, Disney seems to be moving in the right direction with this project so far, and perhaps it'll all make sense if Magic Kingdom expands beyond Big Thunder Mountain. Why was the Enchanted Tiki Room under new management Disney's worst ride update ever? Because the show was radically altered to clumsily include unrelated Disney IP, it badgered guests for attending, and it mocked both the original attraction and the fans who loved it. I'm glad it's gone.